Hello, everybody. I'm Paul Ryden. Imagine a world where you're driving along listening to your favorite song on the radio and you suddenly get out of range of the AM radio station and it's days before you hear that song again. There's no Spotify, there's no CD player, and just you and your dashed hopes of hearing your favorite top 10 tune. That's a small snapshot of the world our guest, Stephen Simpson, came from, and he details it in his nostalgic memoir, Remember When? A boy's tribute to his lower middle class family. Welcome, Stephen. Glad to have you with us from Southern Tennessee, somewhere. Where in Tennessee?
Thank you for having me, Paul. Just outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee, Cleveland, Tennessee,
Oh, okay,
just
yeah,
north of Chattanooga.
right, okay. As your book so poignantly points out, life was a lot simpler back in the day. You were born in 72, so you grew up in the 70s, early 80s. A little simpler than today, right?
Simpler, less complicated for sure, but also a little trying at times.
Yeah. How so?
Well, we didn't have the conveniences that they do today, these generations. Entertainment options were rare. And
Hmm.
if you wanted to watch your favorite TV program, sometimes you'd have to stand in certain places of the house
Yeah.
or adjust the rabbit ears just so you could
Mhm.
tune that program in. We got about, most of my childhood, we got anywhere from 3 to 7 channels on the TV.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and
most
if there was a really two good shows on at the same time, you had to pick, which one are you going to watch. And if you missed it, if you were out, you couldn't record it. You just missed it and had to wait
you
for
just missed it.
reruns in the summer.
Exactly. Well, of course, Dad was in charge of the TV, so whatever he wanted to watch, we were going to go watch. But I remember you bring up reruns, and we used to, of course, get the TV guide,
Uh-huh.
and you'd be looking for something to watch in the summer, and in the TV guide, they'd have that little asterisk by your favorite show indicating it was a rerun and be, oh, I love that episode. We get to watch it again.
Yeah, yeah. And you'd go through the TV guide and you'd circle in pen the shows you're
Yep.
going to watch.
My mom did that very thing. Yeah.
Hmm.
After she did the crossword in the back, she did that very thing.
Absolutely. We boomers, I'm on the boomer generation, you're Gen X, and we kind of make fun of the upcoming generations. But as your book points out, times are even tougher for our parents' generation, so it's all kind of relative.
It really is. I mean, to think, 70s and 80s, we were poor. I wouldn't call us poverty, but we were poor. We always had a place to live. We always had food to eat. And we always had clothes, if not
Mhm.
handed down by our brothers and sisters, brought at the thrift store. But for my mom and dad, my mom grew up in Detroit, and she took one shower a week because hot water was like
What,
liquid gold.
whether you needed
And
it or not, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Well, you got Saturdays, and you had to go stoke the furnace downstairs and let that go for about 30 minutes, and then you go upstairs and take your shower. So yeah, it. I think their toughness kind of made us a little tougher as we were growing up, me and my siblings.
Now, I imagine that the Gen Z kids someday will look back and go, "Oh, we really had it tough," because every generation, or they'll not had it tough. They'll say that times were so much simpler back then, when really they're really not. And like I said,
No,
now you start off your book talking about your mom and your dad extensively. They had quite the upbringing, and that sort of set the stage for who you became, right?
it really did. My dad he was born and raised in West Virginia, just outside Charleston, and that was poverty. It was,
Yeah.
just he was born in 31, so it was just after the Depression, and things were as tight as they can be with money. His parents did anything they could to earn a buck. And and then so as we started growing up, he kind of sarcastically passed down his generation and iterated us, well, you kids don't know how good you have it. We'd be lucky to have a pair of shoes to wear to school, that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Walk up, walk to through 8 feet of snow, uphill
Mm-hmm.
both ways, that kind of thing. What inspired you to recall your childhood? Not only recall it, but put it down on paper, because some of it was kind of hard to live through, I imagine, especially your relationship with your dad. How hard was that to relive it and write it down?
It was easy to relive and write down, to be honest with you. There were a few afternoon cry sessions. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
thinking about our past and thinking about my dad, but ultimately it was easy because we always knew deep down he loved us. He just didn't always know how to show his love.
Yeah.
Mom was a better person. She was raised a little better in Detroit by her parents. And but still, it was never a touchy, lovey, huggy, kissy family. You got kissed on the forehead when you went away for summer camp, or you went away for a week's vacation with another family. I mean, that was it. And
Mhm.
she might hug you when you got back, but that, just not very touchy feely. But my dad, this was kind of therapy for me at the same time. I joke about it, but going through the good times, the bad times. One of the main reasons I wrote the book, as tough as times were, I was the youngest of five. As
Mhm.
tough as times were at at certain points through my childhood, and then my relationship, my mom and dad's relationship, and the issues he had and the flaws he had,
For sure.
it made us a little tougher. But then it made me look back and say, I really had a very good childhood, all things considering. It,
Hmm.
it
Sure.
was, and they always called me the spoiled one because I was the youngest.
Yeah.
But
The
it's
baby.
almost like my siblings and my parents made a point to make sure I had a good childhood, and I did for the most part.
Yeah. How has it affect? How has your growing up affected you as a dad now?
It was I have one daughter, and it was a growth process. It really was. I would have to especially during her early years, I would have to kind of control myself and take a step back and like, "Man, you're starting to sound just like your dad."
Hmm.
When
Yeah.
it came to money issues, when my
Yeah.
wife and I first started out, we didn't have a lot of money, and we weren't struggling there in Georgia, but times were tight a little bit, and then I would be hard on her about certain things, never as hard as my dad was on some of us, or especially my older brothers. But one I remember one instance, she had a bad softball game as like a 6-year-old, and I could just tell she wasn't trying, and my dad kind of came out in me that night, and I took her home, and I talked to her about it, and I talked to her pretty sternly, and then I made her hit the punching bag with a baseball bat for about 20 minutes before she went to bed. And I woke up the next morning. I'm like, no, I gotta reel some of this back in.
What a great coach.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, how did you come to become a writer? I mean, you weren't that wasn't always a big dream of yours. Well, what got you writing?
It never was a big dream as I was a kid. I never thought about it. I always thought I wanted to race dirt bikes or cars or something, like most 8, 9, 10-year-old boys think about.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't think about writing books, for the most part, they don't. And then I got into my teenage years in high school, and I was always moved up to the higher English classes. So I started a little knack for writing as a teenager, but I never really followed it up. I never really pursued it that much. And I had an epiphany one day on our boat in Lake Lanier, and I
Hmm.
just was thinking about it. And I'm just like, I want to write. I want to create stories, and that was a while ago when I had that thought. But through perseverance and about 10 years of etching notes on paper, and also the first part of the book about my mom and dad, some of that I asked her to write before she passed away.
Hmm.
I asked her, the main thing behind the book is I mom and I had this conversation years ago. How come we don't have those remember when moments anymore? How come we don't sit around the kitchen table like we used to with a pot of coffee and
Yeah.
tell stories until lunchtime? We used to do that in my family routinely, and it was part of growing up. And so I convinced her to jot some notes down about her childhood there in Detroit and her and dad's courtship. And I took those notes and kind of ran with them,
Hmm.
and just figured I'd go through our childhood and some stories, some almost life defying miracle stories, and then
Yeah.
some funny sarcastic stories. There's a chapter about our family pets I think is kind of amusing. There's a chapter where my brother Rick, my oldest brother, takes me to the first drive-in movie,
Mhm.
and then there's a chapter about how I went to my first Detroit Lions game, and
Okay.
that was a big moment in my life.
Huh. Well, uh, the stories that you've come up with, um, uh, kind of losing my train of thought here.
Sorry about that.
No, you were a truck driver for a while,
Yes.
and did that offer you an opportunity to come up with stories as you're driving? And how did you do that? Did you write them in your head? Did you record them? Or
I would that's a very good question, Paul. Yeah, it did. You as a truck driver, you have moments where you have to, if you're driving through Atlanta delivering seafood like I was for several years,
Mhm.
you have to be eyes on the road, paying attention at all times.
Right.
And then there's also parts where there's a rural stretch of road. You won't see a car for 10 miles. You can kind of let you, I don't want to say let your mind go, but you can just think about stuff. And I would think about my childhood. I would stop at a rest area or whatever, and I'd use the recording device on my phone to write, hey, I got to talk about this in such and such chapter. Hey, I need to, this should be an entire chapter, like going to my first Detroit Lions game, that sort of thing. So yeah, it helped a lot. You have a lot of idle moments driving through rural Tennessee and rural Georgia and South Carolina for a
Yeah.
number of years. You have plenty of time and an opportunity to think up stories and embellish them a little bit.
Oh, of course. That's what I was going to say before I lost my train of thought. I was going to say that memoir is a great way to start because it's something you are really familiar with. You really know those things, and you can branch off from that to write fiction, or you can, like you say, embellish those stories and make them into something else. Have you thought of? I know you have. You've thought of other books you'd like to write. What other projects have you got coming up?
Well, my wife and I, we've had this idea over the last 2 years. I put this away in my file cabinet about 4 or 5 years ago, and I brought it back out recently like an idea, and she's on board with, and she's like, "Let's do it together." We're gonna try to put together a book this coming year, hopefully later, probably later this year, this next year in 26, a book about etiquette and how people should just not only treat each other a little better, but maybe treat our surroundings a little
Mhm.
better as well. So we're thinking about putting that book together as a team, as a couple, and I look forward to it a lot. I got a couple other fictional stories, and I've thought about just a short. I'm a We have pets, we have dog and a cat, but I'm always been more of a cat guy. And I thought about a book about just going through like 9 or 10 chapters of cat stories and
Mhm.
putting that out there as like half fiction and half truth. But
Yeah.
I definitely have some other ideas, and I hope we get the time and the opportunity to put the ideas on paper here in the next year or two.
Well, back when I was in high school, my mom gave me this book, Male Manners. It's about etiquette.
Okay.
When I read that you were talking about an etiquette book, I thought, well, that'd be great. It's not only been done, but it's a great topic, especially these days with so many people being so rude to each other. That would be
Yeah.
really nice touch, and it's something
Well,
different.
yeah, I don't even like to use the word rude, but you're kind of right there. It is rude and narcissistic a little bit, and where
Yeah,
everyone is so into their own little space and time, and to be, for an example, litter is one of my absolute pet peeves. I
yeah,
can't stand. I don't. I don't understand why people litter. It's one of my wife and I's pet peeves. We see like there's a trash can, you know, 10 steps away. Why couldn't you just made the trash can? Or the whole shopping cart thing is a big thing too to
mhm.
us. It's the cart corrals are out there for a reason.
Yeah,
And if you have a nicer car and you come out of the grocery store 15 minutes later and it's got a door ding in it from a shopping cart,
yeah.
it just, this didn't have to happen.
Yeah. Or if people drop something in a grocery store, put it back on the shelf. How hard is that to
Yeah.
do? Or,
Yeah.
or you try a shirt on, don't throw it back, hang it back up. I don't know. It's just,
Yeah.
well, okay. So, let me ask you about, uh, gosh, I keep losing my train of thought here. You're so fascinating. What family histories are so important? What advice would you give to families who want to keep that history alive?
Well, um, have, you know, even if you have to, even if you have to make time or set aside a time, it just came automatically because we didn't have a lot of entertainment options. Like I said
Mm,
before, it came automatically, especially if a relative was in town, like my Uncle Joe, or if we were at my Uncle Bill or Aunt Sandy's house, everyone waked up the next morning during a holiday or whatever.
Yeah.
Coffee's going, hot cocoa's going, some cookies are laid out. And this is exactly how my mom was raised, by the way, back when she was a child.
Yeah.
And the adults convene around the table, the kitchen table usually, or a fire, and they just sit there and just rehash old stories for hours and hours. And next thing you know, it's lunch.
Yeah.
And and it was just it seems, oh, what about old times? And people kind of like, we don't need to talk about old times. My one of my main things about the book is I think you do need to talk about old times so you appreciate what you have right now.
Yeah.
So
No
that that
kidding.
that was a main point I kind of wanted to get across.
There's a project out called Storyworth, and we did this with my mom in the last year of her life. She died a couple months ago, but last year, what we did was we would have this company would send her a question each week, and she would write about it. What was your relationship with your grandmother like? What church did you go to first? All these things, and then we could also add questions, and she would write a little essay, and each week they would send her a new one. And then at the end of the year, they would put it into a book form, and I could add pictures if I wanted and so on. And it
Oh,
came out as a hardback book about her life. And it was just
oh wow.
fascinating. It was so good to have that now that she's gone. So it's well
Well,
worth it.
one thing to add there, and it's a lesson I didn't take to heart. I've told my daughter this. I will tell my nephew this. I've told him, I think, as well. My dad told me one thing. He's a car guy. Obviously, we were born and raised outside of Detroit.
Mhm.
We were, and he moved up from West Virginia. He was always been a car guy. Most men in my family were car guys. And he told me when I was about probably 15 or 20, take a picture of every car you ever own. You'll
Oh,
regret not doing so one day.
yeah.
And and of course I didn't listen to him. and
Oh,
and I have pictures of a couple. I have a picture of an old Z28, but the lighting's
uh-huh.
horrible. I have a picture. I had a '67 Ford truck that was a classic. Didn't take one picture of it.
Uh-huh.
So back to your original question about advice I would give kids, take pictures, but don't just keep them on your phone.
Yeah.
Take the special ones, take them to the photo place or online,
Yeah.
get the special ones developed and printed, because your grandkids aren't going to have your phone. They're
Right.
not going to be able to scroll through your phone and look at all these wonderful pictures.
Yeah.
So I say print the special ones, and we've kind of started doing that here. And I'm sure you remember the big photo albums that
Oh,
sat on the coffee table at the,
oh yeah.
they were 3 inches thick, and
Yeah.
that's how usually that's how those coffee
Right.
conversations in the morning would start. Someone would dig out one of the photo albums,
Yeah, we still
and it
have
was,
some of those photo albums. I love to
oh
look
yeah,
through those things. Yeah, we
yeah,
had
yeah,
boxes of photos. And I thought, what are we going to do with all these? Well, let's just start putting them in. We didn't even have to worry about what order they were or chronologically. Just stick them in there, and they'll be the source of all kinds of stories. And I do have a picture of me with my first VW Bug, a '63 Bug, and I'm an 18-year-old sitting there very cocky, enjoying it. So I'm glad I have those. You're right.
oh yeah.
So good to remember the past. Well, the book is called Remember When, a boy's tribute to his lower middle class family. It's available on Amazon. I assume it's available other places. So,
Yes,
Stephen,
it's available on Barnes and Noble and pretty much anywhere you can buy books online. Yep.
fantastic. Well, Stephen, thanks so much for joining us. It's just a real pleasure talking with you, and you have a great rest of the day.
It was nice talking to you, Paul. Thank you.
And thank you, folks, for spending a few minutes with us on the Global Book Network. I'm Paul Ryden. We'll see you next time. Now go take a picture of your first car.